Watching the occasional crime show, it also eliminated a potential source for DNA. I read the letter again, stopping when I reached the imposed deadline. I glanced at my watch, saw that it was just past 4 in the afternoon, and cursed under my breath. Since it was Friday, the 11th of December, I had less than 30 hours to figure things out. Another look at the meter stamp told me that the letter had been posted 3 days ago, meaning it had likely been sitting on my desk for 2. I might have had more time if I hadn't procrastinated on opening my mail, but I'd received way more than the usual amount of late. That's because I was getting a lot of personal letters and cards mixed in among the bills and sale flyers that made up my usual deliveries. The sudden spate of personal mail was from people who had heard about me in the news over the past few weeks, when my involvement with the local police during a recent high-profile kidnapping and murder case had become known. While many of the letters were supportive, some had been skeptical, and a few had been downright mean. As a result, I'd stopped opening them after the first couple of weeks and began tossing them into a pile instead. Today was the day I decided to tackle them, though for one brief moment I considered simply throwing all of them away unopened. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I wasn't sure yet, I hadn't done that. I ran my hands through my hair and then immediately regretted doing so as one long fiery red strand fell onto the offending letter. "Way to go, Mac, like you haven't contaminated this thing enough already." I leaned back in my chair, distancing myself, at least physically, from the letter, and indulging in a moment of self-pity. Why this? Why now? Wasn't my life stressful enough already? I wished I could climb into a time machine and go back a year, knowing what I knew now. Maybe then I could fix things, prevent things, change the future. Maybe my father would still be alive, and his girlfriend, Ginny, would still be alive, and the man I considered both a blessing and a curse wouldn't have entered my life yet. Then again, maybe he wouldn't have entered it at all. Would that have been a good thing? The man is Duncan Albright, a homicide detective here in Milwaukee. He entered my life around 2 months ago when I found Ginny's body in the alley behind the bar I own, the bar my father bought back before I was born. My father named it after himself, Mac's Bar, and then gave me the name Mackenzie so I could carry on the legacy. Some might have been annoyed by such presumptuousness, but I was always content with the assumption that I would carry on both the name and the business. This was made easier by the fact that I literally grew up in the bar. My father and I lived in an apartment above it. But the legacy became a little harder to bear when the bar became mine alone last January, after my father was murdered in that same back alley where I found Ginny. Duncan wasn't involved with the investigation into my father's murder because he didn't live or work in Milwaukee then. When I met him, he was relatively new in town, having arrived only months before Ginny's murder, a fact that came into play while he was investigating the crime. Because he was not well known in town, he decided to do a little undercover work by pretending to be an employee in my bar. I wasn't very keen on the idea at first, but Duncan's threats to shut me down if I didn't cooperate helped me decide to go along. Still, I didn't like it for several reasons. For one, he was convinced the killer was one of my employees or customers, and to me that idea was unfathomable. My employees and some of my long-term customers were like family to me. The idea that one of them might be a cold-blooded killer was an idea I could hardly bear to consider. Another reason I wasn't too keen on having a homicide detective watching my every move was because of my disorder. I'm a synesthete, which sounds worse than it is, at least most of the time. Synesthesia is a neurological disorder in which the senses are cross-wired. I don't experience the world around me the way most people do. Every sense I experience is multifaceted and complex. For instance, I may taste or see things that I hear, or I may experience a smell or tactile sensation when I look at certain things or people. Both smells and tastes are typically accompanied by sounds or some sort of physical sensation. In addition to this cross-wiring, my senses are also highly acute, and I'm able to smell things others can't, or hear things others can't, presumably because of my synesthesia.